Welcome back, everybody, to Be Like Christ. Let's talk about stepping into other people's shoes. Do you find that you're not a very compassionate person? I can say personally that I used to pride myself on the fact that I didn't really get very emotional about other people's problems. Well, I'm here to tell you, actually the Bible's here to tell you that you really should stop that. So maybe you are like I used to be, and your question now is, well, how do I become more compassionate? With the level of compassion that God had for us in sending Christ to die for us, I think we could all stand to have a greater capacity to be compassionate about others. Well, good news. Jesus shows us exactly how to do it. Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 through 38. Let's read it together. And Jesus went throughout all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Okay, so this is an interesting text. Jesus is healing people. He's been doing this for quite a while now, and there's a crowd that's gathered, and he looks out at them, and he sees that they have needs, they have struggles, difficulties, and he bemoans, in a way, the fact that the harvest or the work to be done is so plentiful, and yet there are very few people to do it. There are very few people who are willing to take care of the physical needs and the spiritual needs of those around them. And why is that? I think if we look at the actions of Jesus, we can actually discover exactly why there are not many people who are willing to give their lives in service to others. Do you notice what Jesus did in this text? He does at least two things here that stir him to compassion to care for others. The first thing he did in verse 35 is that he went. And the second thing in verse 36 is that he saw. He went to the places. He made himself present in the lives and circumstances of the people who were struggling around him. And it says that he saw. And that doesn't mean that he just saw, physically with his eyeballs, light shined into his eyes. But he lifted up his eyes and he saw those people. And knowing everything, he was able to see in their lives, their individual circumstances, to really perceive how difficult some of the struggles that they had were. And when Jesus had done both of these things, it says that compassion was stirred up inside of him because these people were helpless. It says harassed, and they were like sheep that didn't have a shepherd. They needed someone to help them. And just a side note, the more knowledge that we have, like Jesus being all-knowing, the more compassionate that knowledge should lead us to be. But oftentimes that isn't the case, and it seems to work in the opposite direction a lot of times and for a lot of people. When we make these observations about the way that Christ acted here in this text, it's not difficult to see why there are so few people who are willing to do the Lord's work to take care of these needs. The reasons are a few. Number one is that people don't like to go, like Jesus did, into the lives and circumstances of other people. Why? Because, and I'm part of this, we think, I got my own problems. I have my own difficulties. I have my own struggles. And when I get done dealing with those, I just want to go home and lay on the couch or stay at my house because that's kind of my comfort zone. I don't want to leave that and then go deal with somebody else's problems too. And of course, we also have a difficult time seeing other people. Why? Because for most of us, myself included, it's difficult for me to get my eyes off of myself. My goals, my needs, my wants, where I'm going in 10, 20 years, my focus is on me. And so we often fail to lift our eyes up like Jesus did, to observe the multitudes of people that are around us and to truly see how they are struggling. So the effect that observing and going into the lives of these people had on Jesus, namely compassion was stirred in him, doesn't happen to us when we don't take the time to do those things ourselves. We've got to dedicate time and energy and brain power and effort to put ourselves into the lives of other people so we can know how best to serve them. More compassionate people are more willing to reach out and to help others. And if there's more people willing to reach out and to help others, that means there's more servants in the field of the Lord. To make this a little bit more practical, I can share at least one example of the way that the Lord has made me more compassionate over the years and has forced me to be intentional about stepping into other people's situations and seeing what it's really like to be them. Up until the point when I got married, I had spent almost no time of my life in the hospital. God's always blessed me with good health, and I've been thankful for that. But my wife got very sick, and I had to spend a lot of time in the hospital. And that meant that I had to be in the world of sick people and to see what they did every day and their struggles and how hard it was and the pain and a lot of times the the stress of asking the questions, well, am I going to get better? And how difficult is this treatment going to be? And what day-to-day things that you used to pass over and not think anything about are now struggles because of some health difficulty that you had. I had to step in, I had to see, and it caused me to be more compassionate towards people. I never used to make hospital visits. And since my wife got sick, I make a lot more hospital visits because I understand a little bit better. I have compassion that's stirred up in me for people who are suffering like I had to see others suffer. One thing that I've started doing that's really helped me, and I want to encourage you to do it as well, is to take a piece of paper, write down the name of somebody on that piece of paper. Maybe it's a friend, somebody you go to church with, maybe it's somebody you don't like or who annoys you. And write down what struggles you can observe in their life, or write down the variables that have affected the person that they are. And I think when we take time to really think about all the things that surround them, not only will that make us more compassionate towards them, more patient with them, but it'll help us to understand a little bit better maybe why they treat us the way that they treat us. And I've found that it makes me much more willing to extend grace to somebody when I look at what I've been given in life, what they've been given in life, and realize that there's a vast difference between the way that God has worked out our scenarios. Take the time, at least in your mind, to do what Jesus did. Step into their circumstances and to see who they are and observe their surroundings. I think more compassion in the church would go a really long way in unifying the body and encouraging us to be more evangelistic to people who maybe didn't get to grow up in a Christian home. Maybe their parents weren't Christians, or maybe they didn't have a great mentor in Christ. And you realize, I had those things. They don't. They need help in that aspect. And who can help them? Well, me. I can be a reaper in the harvest of the Lord. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have any more applications for this text or any other comments from the things that I said. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do it. We do new videos a couple times a week, all surrounding biblical Christian topics. Like that video, share it with your friends for anybody who you know who might want to see it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.